So I'm going to show you some Air Manager panels, and what do they all have in common? They were all made using the program SkinMan to create the 3D looking graphics that you can see that are quite compelling, very good graphics without the complication of 3D modeling and rendering. Now, of course it's free, and being a pilot, we're noted for being cheap. The flight attendants, when I was flying, used to tell a joke about they used to ask, how was copper wire invented? And someone said, well, someone dropped a penny between two pilots. Anyway, there was a reason for that. You know, the first year, airline pilots made good money back in those days, but the first year they saw the advantage of putting you on a probationary pay for a year, where you made about a quarter of what you would make when you got off probation. So most guys would be forced into being pretty cheap during that first year of their career. And once you live that way, it's kind of hard to knock that off. So anyway, that's the background of why I was looking for freeware programs to be able to produce these instruments without having to buy Photoshop and rendering programs and so on. So SkinMan is a freeware program by a Japanese guy, and he's an audio engineer, and he uses SkinMan to make interfaces for on-screen encoders, mixer boards, and so on. But we found it works quite well for making instruments. So let me show you a little bit about SkinMan. What I'd like to do in the first video is just show you the interface and get you a basic understanding of what SkinMan is. And then in the second video, I'll go into some details about the interface and what it can do, show you how some of the tools work. And in a third video, I'd like to actually spend a little more time and build a simple instrument, the graphics for a simple instrument using SkinMan. So let's launch SkinMan and see how it works. So let's open SkinMan, and I'll show you the basic interface. As you can see, there's 4 windows to SkinMan. The center window here is the workspace. You can see there's a background that you can change the color of, and this white area is the actual canvas that you can work on, and you can adjust the size of that, of course. And you can see along the side here there's a number of different tools that on a palette that you can use. Then there's a window called a tree, which is more or less layers. A window that shows the layers of, much like in Photoshop or Paint.net or some other graphics program where you can create objects layered. And then we have a color palette, color picker, and it has a fill, primary fill, secondary fill, border color, drop shadow color, and the interior shadow color. And then on the other side here we have a properties window, and that'll show the properties for the objects as we select them on the screen. There's also some tools here to nudge things around and to redo and undo and to zoom in and out and place a grid, and then these buttons right here just hide and show those, like for example the tree or the layers, the properties here, and the color picker here. So that's just a way to show those windows. Ignore this line, this blue line here. It's something about the screen capture, but it has no function. I don't think it'll affect our demo here. So let me give you an example of what happens here. I'm going to take the rectangle tool, and I'm just going to put the cursor where I want to start it in the upper left corner and drag it down. And you can see at the bottom there it's showing me some of the coordinates. And as you can see, once it's that object is there, a lot of things happen. First of all, in the tree we see the rectangle there, and we can rename that rectangle anything we want by right-clicking on it and going down here. And I'll say just rectangle 1, let's say, just to identify it. Okay, and we say OK, and now you see up here you have rectangle 1. You notice here the color of that's just the default color, this pink color. And of course we can change that. That's the primary fill color, and we can change that by selecting color down here, or we can also drag through the color space with this color picker and pick a color and so on. But we'll pick a nice blue color, let's say, so it stands out. So you can see there we go, we got that.
Oh, I'll show you up here. You see the little eye. When you click the eye off, it shows to make the visibility. And I'll explain these other two choices here shortly. And over here on the properties, you can see it tells you the type of object, the position, which is if you want it left to right. The left is the distance from the left of the canvas over here. The top is down. As you can see, in this case, they're equal. But if I drag them, you'll see those numbers change. And then the size of the object. And if I take the bottom, the upper right is anchored, but we can move that. We can move that around, and we can move the bottom wherever we want. And you can see when I grab those little handles and move it, it changes the coordinates. The other thing interesting about these coordinates is that you can put the mouse. First of all, you can click on them and use this little scroll area to move that, a little slider, or you can put your mouse over there, and then you can just use the scroll wheel, and you can see this is moving it left and right, this is moving it up and down, this is growing it. If I make the horizontal size larger, you can see it's growing and stays anchored on the left side, so it always grows to the right. And the same thing with the height, it always grows down, and you can see as I move that down, it gets larger. So that gets you started. You can see the first fill color, second fill color, and so on. And we'll talk more about that in the future. I'm going to talk about all these properties here shortly. I'm going to show you one more thing. Just kind of let's take another circle. Let's take another shape, and we'll call it we'll take a circle, and or an ellipse, if you will. You can constrain dragging with the control with the shift key. So you can see if you want to constrain the size. Of course, you can always, as you right click, there's a number of menu choices, which we'll talk about in the future. But what I wanted to show you here is now we have this ellipse, and you can see in the tree over here on the upper left, you have a rectangle one and an ellipse. Now come back over to the properties, and you can see we have normal as the operation for both of these objects. I'll click on the rectangle. You can see normal. Now if I drag this, one other thing I'll show you before I drag that. Let's look at this second option. You can see I can hide and show any of these things just by clicking the little eye there. If I click the next one, it's a red eye, and that says show only that object, which is nice if you've got a bunch of things on the screen, you want to work on something, you can just select that item and it's the only one seen. And then there's some little padlocks here if you want to lock the position of that object. So let me show you how this operation works. If I drag this ellipse up onto the rectangle, now it becomes like you can see the way it's shown is kind of like a child of the parent object, which is the rectangle. And of course we can either expand or show those with the plus or minus here where I'm clicking. And now if we click on this second object here, and you can see the rectangle says normal. I'm going to go to the ellipse. I'm going to select that, and now I'm going to look at the options under operation. I have shape plus, which means add them together, shape minus, which means subtract that shape from the parent, and then we have shape asterisk, which is intersection. So let me show you real quickly how those would work. In fact, let me drag this off to the side so it's a little more noticeable. Now I'm going to show you plus first. And you can see as I shape plus, we get it inherits the characteristics of the parent, color-wise, and so on. Now let me show you shape minus. Now it's going to subtract that ellipse shape, and you can see it's cut out. Then I can say shape intersection, and now it's showing the intersection, the places where those two objects overlap. So that's how that works. So that's the basic operation of how you can do the geometry with multiple objects, multiple shapes, and we'll learn more about what all is available on this palette here, but there's some really powerful tools there. Just one more thing I'll show you here. Let me bring these back to and you can see now the shape intersection has nothing to intersect with. So I'm going to go back to normal, and now we have those two objects. Now, you notice that right now the pink is on top of the blue. Of course, if I drag it up above the blue, like right there, you can see a little black highlight. You can see now the blue is on top, the ellipse is behind. So the objects on the front go up as we go back. So the back layer is at the top, the front layer is at the bottom. And we can order these in numerous ways. And it's really kind of nice when you're building an instrument because you can make a bezel, and you can start with the background and work your way forward, lettering and bezels, and then needles for airspeed indicators, and even sometimes maybe a little fake shine for the glass cover of the instrument or whatever. So that's how that would work. So let me get rid of this. I'm going to delete the ellipse and go with just this rectangle here to show you some of the characteristics of how this works. First of all, across the top here, we have you can see there's a menu system, and it's standard file menu, but it also has some the last objects the last files that have been worked on, and you can also export the image, and you can save the image, but you can export it as an image, as a PNG, or several different graphic formats. And the way it works is you can export it as you can see the different formats, but a PNG is what we use for Air Manager. So you can have a PNG with alpha, with a clear layer, alpha layer, and so on, or with an opaque background, and pretty standard there. But anyway, then there's the edit menu, and that there again is quite normal, although you can operate on these primitives. Basically, the pop-up menu that you get when you right-click on an object, you can also get to those things here, and you can see such things as group and ungroup, and mirror and transform, and all sorts of copy coordinates to the clipboard, which is useful if you're going to use it in a script. You can copy those coordinates. And then we have a display menu, and it again allows you to show those other three windows, just like with the pop-up little buttons here, and zoom in and zoom out. Pretty redundant there. Then we have a canvas, and this tells where we can the image properties. So clip enter, we can set this white area, the background. We can change the size of that with these coordinates here. We can also under the canvas, we can trim. We can cause it to be trimmed to the visual, which would make if we have one object in here, it would resize the canvas to exactly fit that. And sometimes when you put a background image in there, that's a nice way to resize everything, especially if it's bigger than your work area. It will expand to fit. You can turn a grid on and off, and you can change the background color. Now the background color is the area, the background of the image here, which would be this white area in this case. We can change the background color to, say, we can change it to green here, and say OK, and then we'll change that back to background color back to white. I don't know why you'd want it a color like that, and you can also change the workspace color, and I'm not going to show you that, but it's this gray area. I think the gray default is perfectly good for kind of like a desktop that you're working on. So that's how that works. Now let me take this object here and go through the properties real quick. Now the properties vary from object to object, but some of them are similar. So I'll go there. We talked about the location and the operation. Now we have this slant, and what the slant does is just change the slant of the object, as you can see. We can put the cursor, the I-beam cursor in there, and use the mouse to change it 1 degree at a time. And then same thing with angle. Let's go back to 0 there. And the same thing with angle. What that does, and again, you can use the slider, or you can change it with a mouse in there, or you can type a number in. You can say like back to 0. Then we have corners, and that's only for the rectangle, but it works quite nicely. You can put you can change the corners if you want. If you notice, there's only one field here now, so you can change the corners. And you can see there's the rounded corner. You got an R there. If I click clip, it does a clip, just right between the corner, and it's 102 pixels each way. And we can use the like negative round, or this circular with a cutout. And finally, we can do the square cutout. It looks like an L there. Now, you can also select separate, and now we can set each one of these corners separately. Now, you notice since they were all the same, it's got the value of 102 for all of them, but we can make one for each of the different styles of corners, so on. And then finally, we can say X, Y separate, and then we can change the X and the Y separately. So you can see I got the upper left one here, and I can change the X indent and then the Y and so on. So it gives you a lot of flexibility. Then under colors, you got an alpha value for each color. You got the fill and the secondary fill. The secondary fill is good. Let's pick something for the secondary fill like black. And then if you can see that black is the secondary fill, and if I take this gradient tool, I can create a gradient and the angle of the gradient by dragging that around. We'll talk more about that later. The other thing we can do is create a border. There's a border color here. It's black, but let's make it red. And then down here, as we work our way down, you can see the gradation in the gradients. And here we have fill. And you can see you can click fill, and it either can be filled or not filled. In this case, it's filled. You click border, and it'll show a border. And you can see that very faint red border. And we can come down here below and use the little, I'm using the mouse wheel, or we can use the slider and our type of numbers in, and we can change the size of that border that we have. And that border, how the corners, I'm going to scroll down a little. How the border corners, do they round? Do they bevel? Do they miter? Again, you can have a master alpha. You can also anti-alias on. I suggest you keep that on all the time. And then we have some lighting here. I'll go into that more detail. But generally the default is a light from the upper left. And you'll see in just a moment why that matters. This emboss is extremely useful. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this back to a color that would be more typical of an instrument face. I'm going to get rid of the gradient, and I'm going to get rid of the border here. Now what I'm going to show you is that when I get down here to emboss, what I can do is I can tell it to make it look as though, even though it's not a 3D program, to make it look as though it's a 3D program. And when we get down here to emboss, I can say the depth, and I can watch what happens as I make that like 10 pixels depth. You can see you got a highlight on this side and a shadow on that side. And if I change the background color to something where you can notice it a little better, let's take the background color to another gray, maybe a lighter gray. And click OK. Now you can see how that gives you that 3D look, and you can adjust that. And then when you come up here to the lighting, you can say, give me a flat, for example, specular highlight, and then you can change the width of the highlight, the amount of highlight. You can turn it up or down. You can change the angle of the highlight. You can see I can change the width of the highlight. I'll make it like wider, and it won't be so noticeable. And then we can change the ambient light too. So those are in there. You notice there's a possibility of 2 different lights. So you can have a primary and a secondary light, and you can create some pretty cool 3D effects, especially when you go down here and combine that with the shadows. We can add textures to these things too, and that's beyond what I want to talk about today. But let's look at this. We can create a drop shadow or an inside shadow. We use the drop shadow. You can see it defaults at 45, but we can click and make it something else. We'll leave it at 45, and we can select the offset. We won't notice that until we increase the density, though. So I'm going to increase the density, and you can see it's offset by 8 pixels in a direction of 45. And then this diffuse, we can change this value, and we can diffuse it. So we can make the shadow diffused and make it look more realistic. So now you can see with the diffusing, and then we tend to overdo this depth. I'm going to turn the depth back down to about 2 or 3. And now you can see it's a pretty compelling looking 3D looking object there using those settings. So again, diffusing it, the density or the darkness of the shadow, and the offset. And of course, you can change the color too, although, you know, a blue shadow is not going to be, I got to select drop shadow, yes, blue. Probably not as effective. So anyway, we'll go more into this in the next thing. I'd just like one more thing I'd like to show you before we finish today. So now back with a plain white work area, I'd like to show you, kind of go through the palette here and show you each of these tools. We already looked pretty much at the rectangle and the circle, and as you can see, the ellipse are circle, and as you can see, there's slightly different properties for each object, and that's what I'll go around and look at in detail on the next version. But just to give you an idea of some of the stuff, just what can happen here. I'm going to grab this thing, and you can see I can start a start angle, and it's measured from the top, but 180, and we can measure the end angle, the stop, and we can create you know, shapes, pie shapes, and so on. So there are ways to edit that with the start and stop angles. As I said, the top is top, so when it says minus 180, it's this way, and plus 180 is to the right. So that's one of the tools. Let me get rid of those. And you notice, for example, the rectangle doesn't have those same start and stop, because that mostly is just for radial type objects. Let's get rid of that. Let's go on to the next one down. This one is probably the most useful. I'm going to hold the shift key down and make a nice square shape. And you can see this is a star. Now there's three. You can change the number of vertices. I can again put my mouse in there and change that, and you can see the number of vertices change. And then I can change the star depth. And what that does is just brings the alternate vertices in, which these can be useful for making knobs and other shapes. Let me try a little more here. Let's try the curve, and that kind of is the vertices, how curved those are. You can see the star depth, the curve. We can take the curve the other way and make it round. So we can create all sorts of interesting shapes with that could approximate, as I said, aircraft knobs and so on. Again, those can have slant and angles, so on. Let's zero those out. You can just type in there again. That you can either pull the sliders, type, or use your mouse with the I-beam in there. So that gives you an idea there. And then let's go to the next one. And this is a pretty powerful one, I think, for a lot of things you're going to want to make. Let's delete that, and let's look at the text. Text is, of course, pretty self-explanatory. You can see we can drag and resize it that way, or we can come down here and click you can change the text right here where it says text, and I'll say Russ. And we can change the aspect ratio, the size. First of all, there's a pixel size, and we can enter a number in there. Let's say 60. And then we can change the aspect ratio. Of course, 100 would be normal for the font, so I'll put 100 in there. But you can see I can put my pixel, my I-beam in there and change that and make the letters bigger or smaller. Of course, you can adjust the font that you've selected too. And then you can also affect the font spacing. You can spread the letters out or tighten them up. So you have a lot of room. And then, of course, bold, italic, and so on. So the point is there's lots of flexibility for creating text. The text can be colored any way you want. You know, you can make it a different color, or white on a black background. It's a great way to label instruments. And again, it's pretty powerful. let's look at, let's get rid of that. And let's look at the next one. The next one's going to be this shape. Now this is the closed shape, the solid shape. And we can just start clicking on objects and and we can click on the first one to close it in. And then we can do a lot of the same things, rotate, angles, and so on. But I will show you that you can edit these shapes. Just right-click and get that contextual menu and click Edit Shape. And then you can click on any one of these points, and you can pull the Bezier curve handles out, and you can shape that and move the points and so on. So you can create a lot of interesting shapes that way. And then there's also another tool. I'll get rid of that, delete. Let's get rid of that. I got to quit out of the edit mode there, delete. Hang on. I got to select it and then go delete. And the other thing is this. This is the same kind of tool, but it creates shapes that are not don't have to be closed, and they don't have the fill. They're just lines. And of course, they can adjust those just the same way you do with any of the border. The border width is the line width. You can change those. Let's get rid of that. Let's look at probably one of my favorite tools is the line tool. I'm going to hold the shift key down and make some lines. You can see they default to black. I'll make them a little thicker. And then you have a lot of the same things as you did with the pie shape. You can create a start angle and an end angle. You can tell it how many vertices you want. So this is really a good way to build radial markings, because you can, right here where it says star depth, you can bring the star depth up. And in fact, I'm going to use this slider here. And you can create radial markings that are perfectly spaced based on how many units you need. And you can like copy this and paste it, right? And then double, let's say this says 21 vertices, let's put 42 in there. And now you can see we've created a half scale that's inside, and we could change the star depth on that, see? And you can get the idea how we can make some pretty quick radial markings around instruments. The other thing the star tool can do, let me get rid of one of these. Let's get rid of the second one. Again, I just hit the delete key there. Let's change we select that, and you can see there's also, that's a radiate here. We can also create horizontal lines and vertical scales, which are great for tape instruments like EFIS and compasses and so on. And we have all the same kind of tools. We can change the size and so on. So that's a really powerful tool, great for making instruments. We talked about the gradient tool. We also have a crop tool, which will trim objects. And then one of the objects here, I'm going to get rid of that. Let me select this and get rid of it. Delete. Is the graphics tool. And we can bring some kind of a graphic into our world here, and use it either as part of the instrument, or we can use it as a background. Like, for example, if I click here to the canvas and say trim visible, now that image, and let me zoom out here with a -1, you can see there was some white space around that instrument, but it trimmed to the outside dimensions of that instrument and it allows it to exactly fit the canvas. So a lot of times if you get a picture of an instrument, you can put it in the background. And then using this show only tool, you can bring it to the front to kind of and then lay objects over it and try to copy the look of an instrument in the scale of an instrument without having to do that. So anyway, that should do it for today. I wanted to give you an idea what is possible, and I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to show you in the next video how to go a little further and how to use each one of these tools, and we'll look at the properties in detail, play around with each of those, and then the last video we'll try to put that together into laying out a basic instrument. Thanks for watching today. If you like it, feel free to give it a like, subscribe if you're not a subscriber and you want to continue and you want to be notified, click the little bell, and I hope to see you on the next video, which will be out shortly. Thank you. Have a great day.